Hello there, I am Man in Yellow and welcome back to Phobies. In this video I would like to talk a little bit about the state of Phobies and like the meta and the game in general and things like that. And the reason why I'm making a video like this is because we had a update, I think it was a bit less than a month ago, like 25 days or something like that. And it was very underwhelming. At least a lot of people in the community feel like it was very underwhelming because they didn't really address any of the game's issues, and the balance changes that they did were all really rather bad, to be honest. Like almost all of them were bad. There were like one or two decent ones, but most of them really weren't very good changes in my opinion. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that and also about some of the other changes which are actually way more important than balance changes in my opinion. But first we will talk a bit about the balance changes. So the reason why I think they are bad is because they seem to, at least that's what I heard someone in the Discord say, like that they had heard from the dev team, that they were basing the nerfs or buffs purely on win rates. And that is a very bad way of balancing a game like this. That may seem weird to someone who doesn't understand that, which I assume the developers don't because they're doing it like that. But in a game like this, something is not necessarily balanced just because it's at a 50% win rate. That is not how this works, because some of the phobies are way harder or way easier to play than others, and some of them are only good in specific situations. If you have a phobie that is very easy to play, it will maybe be balanced at a higher win rate. So it could be 54% win rate and still be perfectly balanced. And if you have a phobie that is really hard to play, it could be at 48% win rate and still be perfectly balanced. Because even though it's at a lower win rate, if you use it correctly, maybe it's like above that in reality. So that's kind of something you have to consider. And the same thing with situational phobies. If you have a situational phobie that is played a lot in situations where it's not very good, like it has a very high pick rate despite being rather situational, it will likely have a below average win rate and maybe be balanced there. On the other hand, if you have a phobie that is only very good in specific situations and it's only used for those situations, its win rate could be 60% and it could still be balanced. And you need to consider that when you look at phobies and whether they should be nerfed or not. And they are obviously not doing that. As an example, you could go to something like a Clubster. This got a 100 health nerf in the last patch, which isn't a huge nerf, let's be honest, but it's still a nerf to a phobie that really didn't need a nerf. This was like a little bit better than some of the other melee phobies, but I still don't think this is a strong phobie. I don't think it was a strong phobie before either. I placed this as like a decent bit above average, but not in the strong tier in my tier list. And the reason why Clubster is probably showing up as a higher win rate phobie is because you only really use this phobie if you are ahead. That's where you use this phobie. You pull it out when you want to hard rush, you pull it out when you are pushing into the opponent's side of the board and you need something to join your team fast so that you can overwhelm the enemy. That is what this phobie is used for. So if this phobie is used correctly, which it probably is at least to some degree at the higher ranks, it will likely show up as a high win rate phobie. Another phobie would be Smiley, which we could look at. Smiley has received several buffs now. It both got buffed in the last patch and I think one of the ones before that. And it really didn't need this buff that it got recently. You could maybe make an argument for the earlier buff, but this buff that it got last time, certainly it did not need that. It got 400 health, which is absolutely massive for a phobie like this. And Smiley is a phobie that may be balanced at a lower than 50% win rate in my opinion. And that is because a lot of people use Smiley when they really shouldn't be using it. Like they see the opponent bring out a boss and then they bring the Smiley, but they forget about the opponent also having a bow mangles and inoculars, and the Smiley is never going to connect. It's just going to die. Smiley also isn't even really that good into boss, to be honest. That's not really where it shines. Honestly, boss beats up Smiley most of the time because you just fight the opponent's phobies and ignore the Smiley and then they die. That's what often happens in that matchup. But this is a phobie that can be very good situationally, but people are using it a lot more than they should. So this may be balanced at 46% win rate, just as an example. Could also look at something like Rocket Man. Now, I don't know whether it was in lower ranks or higher ranks that Rocket Man may have had an above average win rate, but Rocket Man is something that you should only be bringing if you're playing for it correctly. You should only bring this in the late game when the opponent has slow phobies and they can't access fire in any way, meaning they've spent all of their keys and they don't have a fire phobia on the board. If all of those conditions are fulfilled, Rocket Man was a decent play. But if you use it outside of that, it is a terrible phobie. So if people are only using it in the right situation, it may have showed up as a 52% win rate phobie, even though in reality as an overall phobie, this is a terrible, terrible unit. Like, I would, as a general use phobie, I would not play this at 5 keys. That is how bad this is. You could legitimately remove a key from it and it would still not be good. So they need to think about that when they are doing balance changes, if they want to balance the game properly. Because if they don't want to balance the game properly, they may as well just not do it, because they're just making the community like them less when they do that. Another phobia that they made changes for was Billy, who they only nerfed for 100 health. This phobia is disgustingly strong. Even with 100 less health, it's still disgustingly strong. Like, it is very, very, very powerful. It can snipe very far into the map, further than any other phobia. It can poke enemies without being caught ever. You basically can't lock this thing down. There's not really any real counters to it outside of setting up a pull and hoping you can kill it. But even then, that's not that easy to do most of the time. It's at the point where a lot of the time you see people just bank early on and bring a Billy. Like, they go corn plus 1 key into bank into Billy and they just start poking you. And that's how broken this phobia is. You can't really do that. I mean, you can do it with other phobies, but it's not very good to do that with other phobies most of the time. You want to, like, mix up your keys at the lower key, like a lower turns or whatever you want to call it, the early turns on small maps. And on large maps, this is just disgustingly strong. So this phobia should definitely have got nerfed in some other way or just harder, because that, like, 100 health nerf did not address anything. Another phobia we could also look at is this Dr. Holiday. This is a extremely strong phobia even after the nerf. And that is because the nerf didn't address what's powerful about this phobia at all. This phobia was not strong because it had 1300 health, or weak now because it has 100 or 200 less health. That doesn't matter. This is strong because it has insanely high reach. You can't avoid it. It defends for itself, like it defends itself early game. So you can't even really walk up to this because you just get pulled in and die if you try to do that. It has 900 damage if you walk into the 3-tile range, like at level 1 instantly. So if you walk up with a Ginsting and they have Dr. Holiday and a 1 key, your Ginsting is probably dead. Like that is how disgustingly strong this thing is. So, and the worst thing about it is it's not even a hard phobia to play either. This is a very, very easy phobia to play. You can basically turn your brain off. So they didn't really address any of the major issues in the game, and they instead nerfed phobies which didn't even need to be nerfed. And the buffs that they did for some of the phobies also didn't address why they were weak. Like, they gave Brood Worst 300 health as if that is going to fix its issues. It's still a terrible phobia. So they did a lot of bad things. Pretty much the only good balance changes in the patch were Rocket Man, Whiskers, and maybe Undertaker. I don't know, because I haven't really seen Undertaker, so I don't know if it's good or not now. So I can't really say that. But those were the only ones that were like positives. Meanwhile, we are sitting here looking at a game where there are several phobies that really, really need a nerf. So the Dr. Holiday obviously kind of needed a nerf. It's a little bit less strong now, but it's still too strong. In reality, I think they should just give it the health back and actually go for what's a problem with that phobia, which is that it has that insane range at a 1-turn cooldown with a 1-turn lock. Why does that phobia just get summoned and it's instantly like taking over the entire game? At least give it a 2-turn lock and maybe a 2-turn cooldown, and then we can start to look at like how you counter it and stuff. But you can't counter it right now because it just comes out and then it's already active. So you can't do anything against it. Billy also needed more of a nerf. Attractor is still in the game as it was before. Why is that allowed? Like, this phobia is insanely powerful, and it has been insanely powerful for basically the entirety of the game's lifespan. Like, this Phobie is disgustingly strong. It has been a top 3 Phobie since the first patch in the game. That is how powerful this thing is. And for a good amount of the time, it was the best Phobie in the game, in my opinion. So this thing is just like, why is this allowed to exist like this? Like, make this 800 health at least, maybe 750, or put a lock more on it or something. Because, like, the one cooldown nerf that they did to it, that is not enough. Like, it really didn't do much for how powerful it was, if we're being honest. And this is also a Phobie that could be balanced at a lower than 50% win rate, because Attractor is very powerful, and at the higher ranks it's considered pretty easy to play, but for newer or just less experienced players, they may end up getting their Attractor killed because it's very easy to kill this thing if they misplace it. So it's like, it's not a hard Phobie to play, but it's an easy Phobie to misplay, I guess you can say, which is a weird like thing to say, but I think this Phobie definitely needs a nerf because it is still disgustingly strong. Then we have something like the Shovel. Are we really okay with this having that good stats while it has the best utility ability in the game, essentially? I mean, Phantom's ability is better, and so is the, whatever it's called, the highest stress level Phobie. I can never remember its name. The one that gives shield. I guess those are technically speaking better utility Phobies, but they cost way more too, like almost double. This is so easy to get out. You just summon it at any point in the game, and instantly your Phobies become way scarier. And like, I'm kind of fine with the ability existing because it does make some of the like Phobies that had problems before a little bit easier or better to play. But it should not have this many stats while still being this good. Like, this should be 900 health, 300 attack at most as a Phobie. This thing should not be a higher statted than a Gravedigger. Now, Gravedigger is also very powerful and it's a very good ability, but it's not quite the same kind of thing as the Shovel, because this is just insanely broken, to be honest. Like, this Phobie is out of this world. I can't even believe that they like put it in the game without a lock for a day, but that's another discussion entirely. That was when they released it. It was very broken. But like, what I'm getting at here is they are not addressing the Phobies that are actually broken in this game, and instead they were nerfing things that should not be nerfed because they don't understand their game. That's really what it comes down to. At a high level, they do not understand how the game is played. Even at like a mid-level of play, I don't think they understand how the game is played. And that is a bit of a problem if you want to make balance changes. So they should probably like talk with some of the high-level players, many of which are in the Discord, and maybe take some of their suggestions. Or maybe they should just think a bit more before they do the balance changes, because doing them purely based on win rate is not going to make a balanced game. It's just not, whether they like that or not. But the most frustrating thing about all of this, which I want to get at, is that the balance changing is not the most important thing that needs to happen in this game. Balance changing is like fourth on the list, in my opinion. It's at least further down the list than being first. So if they can't even get that right, and it should also be the easiest thing to change, to be honest. So if they can't even get that right, it's a really bad sign, and it's a very bad look from them, and it shows they're out of touch with what the community actually wants and what the game needs to be good. And like, there are a lot of things that need to be changed. Some are more important than others. We should be looking at things like matchmaking, and like, not necessarily like whether people face someone over leveled or not, because that's just the nature of the game. That's going to happen. But why do people rank up so fast when they just start the game? Why can I make an account and get to Sum of All Fears in a week or two, and then I'm playing against people who have literally like 2 or 3 times my level at times? That's not how the game should be. I should not be ranking up that fast, even if I am an experienced player. And even if we're not looking at like the higher ranks, even a normal player will get to like primals or low doomsday fairly quickly, and they will maybe be playing with 5 or 6 leveled Phobies, something like that, and they will face enemies who have Phobies that are level 15 maybe at times. And I'm just gonna say it straight up, that makes people quit the game. That like if I got into this game and I went constantly against Phobies which had 30% more stats than me or my Phobies, I would not want to play that game. Straight up, like I would not continue playing Phobies if I started today. That's the point the game is at right now. So we have both a boring meta, in my opinion, and we also have this like ranking up problem. Now, the things they could do to change this is, of course, they could make people go through the ranks less fast because they are essentially boosting people to the top. Like there is just more and more Sum of All Fears players, and a lot of them have very big differences in their levels. Like you could see someone being like level 50 or 60 facing someone who's level 100, even when it's not at the start of seasons, which is just not okay if you want your game to feel good to play. Then there are other things such as the map design being very bad on some of the maps. Some of them are also very good. I should give them some credit because some of the maps are very good. But there is also a decent chunk of maps which have been in the game for a fairly long time and are very, very boring to play on. And they don't even need to change that much for most of them. Most of them could be one block or one panic point that they move slightly and suddenly they would be fun to play on. So it's kind of sad that they aren't doing that too, because that's a thing that actually affects the entire player base and makes the game more fun for everyone. For example, something like Lights Out, I don't know if it's still in right now, but I remember it being in fairly recently. That was the wrong tab to go into. Is Lights Out still in here? No, it's not. But Lights Out is a map that I think is very, very, very boring, just as an example. And there are more than that are also boring, like Pluto, I believe it was called. I haven't seen in a decent chunk of time. Actually, let me just check that it's called Pluto, so I'm not saying the wrong one. But there are a lot of maps in the game that could need changes or should be changed, in my opinion. Let me just quickly go to the map tab, because I have it, I think I have it saved somewhere in here. You have like a wiki with maps in here. But there are, I would say it's probably something like 30 to 40% of the maps are extremely boring to play on, and then there's like 20% which are a bit boring, and then the rest are rather good or fun to play on. Let me just pull the maps over here so that we can look at some of them, if it will allow me to do that. There we go. So you can see here we have some of the maps in the game. And if we just take a look at some of the maps, for example, Locker Room Funk, that's generally speaking not that fun of a map. It's just mechs, but it's like kind of an okay, I would say that's in the middle. But Toys in the Attic, for example, is a terrible map. Just straight up, this map is awful. I didn't even know you could make a map with conveyors and make it bad, because most of the other conveyor maps are awesome, but this one just sucks. It's a terrible map design. So like, why do we still make these maps? Because this is the newer map and we are still making such terrible maps. It should be pretty obvious at this point what makes a map good or bad. They have Lights Out here, which I think is terrible, and it's not terrible because of the game stalling out as much as on Toys in the Attic. It also stalls out on Lights Out, but that's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is that every game on Lights Out feels pretty much the same. You have like 1 in 10 or 15 games that actually feel unique on it, and the rest are games that feel like you've played them before. And I think those are pretty bad. I think Crypto is pretty bad. That was the map I was thinking of. Pluto is actually not bad, but Crypto is absolutely terrible too. I haven't seen it in a while, so I don't know if they are still putting that in. But Crypto is really bad too. And there's a decent chunk of maps like that in here, which are just very, very bad maps in my opinion. And they should be changed, because they can change them just a little bit and they will become a lot more fun. Then there are the rewards and packs and stuff like that. So for example, we can look at season packs, which are in here, and I can't even be bothered to go for this larger pack anymore, because the packs are just terrible most of the time. Like, I sit here and I play 100 games more in here, and I open this pack and I get a single duplicate scratch card. That's not worth my time, let's be honest. Like that, if you love the game and you can play it a lot, maybe you get there anyway. And I do love the game, but I can't really play it that much because the meta is boring right now. And like, if they made the season packs better, people would be more encouraged to play. because getting to the end of the season after like 28 or 30 days or whatever it is, and getting nothing from your pack is also going to make players quit, because that is very unfun. Like, you have waited an entire month, you have played a lot of games, and you are getting nothing from it, is what it feels like for them. Like, I get that there are duplicates in there and you get to level up some phobies, but that doesn't feel exciting. Getting a new phobie, that feels exciting, and there are so many phobies in the game by now. You are not going to make people spend less money on the game because they got an ultra rare one of their in one of the season packs, or even just a normal rare. Like, at this point, they should just almost guarantee that you get a new phobie from the packs, unless you own like all of the commons, uncommons, and rares. Then maybe you don't get a new ultra rare every single time. But if you don't own all rares, you should be getting a rare every time you are like maxing out a season pack, because it's really an awful feeling for most players whenever you grind to 160 games and then you just get nothing from it. The same thing can also be said about the actual pack system in here, which we buy packs for. So you sit down and you grind for a dreadful pack and then you just get nothing from it, or maybe you get an uncommon or something. That feels pretty terrible. And I don't mind there being blanks in the packs. There should of course be some blanks, because otherwise it's just like you get all of the phobies in a couple months, which would also be kind of weird. But like, there should be a pity timer on this, is what I'm getting at here, because that is the most easy way to solve this problem. This is how a lot of games do gacha systems, is that they put pity packs in, and that would mean that, for example, for something like a dreadful pack, you could have every 4 times you do it, you are guaranteed a new ultra rare, or maybe every 5 or every 6, whatever number suits your taste, right? And that way you would always have something to look forward to. You would feel that you are making progress towards getting something good, even when you get a blank or like a bad pack. And it would just generally feel better. And honestly, it's probably going to make people spend more money on your game when you do that. Because when you're sitting here and you see that you have only 1 left to get the ultra rare, a lot of people are going to go into the deals here and look for some way to get coffee or an ultra rare out of it, just because that's exciting, and people tend to do that with games. So they should definitely do that just to make them a bit better. They should probably also up the rates a little bit, because the rates are just terrible, but that would be fixed if they put a pity timer in anyway, so that's not really that big a deal. But like, these kind of things are pretty like annoying to see go completely unaddressed. Like, why are we still sitting here with these issues this far into the game's lifespan? And why can't they even balance their game properly this far? And like, that should not be hard to do. And these kind of feelings are very frustrating for most players, especially for some of the people who take the game more seriously or have played it at a, like, I won't say a higher level, but they've played it as their main game. You've seen a lot of them quit by now. Like, a lot of the players which were really good, which I used to see up here, have quit the game. For example, Engineer is not here anymore, I believe. There's also like a lot of other ones that have quit. I can't remember them all by name when I'm just sitting here. But like Hyper has also dropped the game. There are many people who also just feel very frustrated with the game. They like don't even try and play games. They just throw things out to get their daily rewards, and then they eventually probably quit the game, because that's not fun either. They're essentially just hoping that the game will be fixed at some point, but they are not very like hopeful for it, I guess you could say. So like, all of these things just going unaddressed while they're also making bad balance changes will probably ruin their game and make people quit. And that's a very bad thing, because maybe it doesn't matter much to the casual player, but a lot of the casual players will look at the community, they will look at videos, and they will maybe look at the game online and ask like how the game is doing and stuff. And if everyone online says the game is dead, the game is eventually going to die, even if it isn't dead at that point. So I think they need to address at least some of these issues. And like, I'm hoping that they will do something about it in one of the future patches, because otherwise I can't really see a world where Phobie keeps on being a fun game to play for me or for other players in general. And I also know that there are already a decent amount of my viewers who don't even play the game anymore, but just watch me play it because I guess they enjoy the videos which I am very thankful for, but I think it would be a lot more fun if people were actually playing the game because it wasn't like designed in such a bad way. Also, another thing I should mention that they could do for the whole like what's it called, like you level up too fast thing, if they reduce the amount of stats that you gain per level, which would be a huge change. But if they did that, it would make the game a lot more balanced. Like it would allow newer players to actually get into the game and have a chance. So that is another thing they could do. Also, I don't know if I mentioned Inoculus, but Inoculus is also still very stupid. Like, I'm not even rating this phobia as like insanely strong or anything. I'm putting it at like the lower end of very strong phobies, which a lot of people disagree with. They think it should be higher. But I don't think this phobia is necessarily broken, but it is extremely boring. It promotes a very boring playstyle, and it has also been in the game for very long, just like Attractor. So this thing should probably also see a small nerf, just so that we get to see some of the other phobies in the game actually. Like, if they just made this 750 health or even just 700 health, it would help a lot on the game's like current meta, in my opinion, and how fun it is to play. And that's also a phobia that a lot of newer players actually hate because they just see it over and over and over and over, since it's a low rarity phobia that is pretty easy to play and rather strong. So there would be a lot of good things happening in the game if you nerfed some of those phobies, in my opinion. But for some reason they are going untouched despite them having existed in the game for a rather long time. Anyways, that was pretty much everything I had for this video. I just wanted to talk a bit about this and get some of my own frustrations out, because it is very annoying when you have a game like this, which I don't play it like insanely seriously or anything, but I have played it for a long time, and it's one of my like peaceful games, or whatever you want to call it, chill games, where I just sit down and I play this while I watch something. And having it be so annoying or boring to play at times is a very sad feeling, because it feels like the game is going towards eventually dying, and I don't want to see that happen, because I enjoy playing Phobies, like when it comes down to it, even if there are some of the things that are very frustrating and some of the Phobies that are bad for the meta right now. I still love Phobies, so I don't want to see the game die, and I hope they will make some changes for it, because it's just sad where it's going right now, in my opinion. Anyways, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.